I'm a human geographer based at the University of Oxford. And with me is Maaret Jokela-Pansini, one of my fellow researchers and a colleague, and Oonagh Cousins from Long COVID Support, but also he's been working with us at the University of Oxford on this. And managing the chat along with so many other things is Jo Danio from Long COVID Support, who's also been part of this project team from the start. What we'd like to share with you today arose from our research as academics, but we became really interested in how one of the research methods we use, called body mapping, and we'll talk about this in a bit more detail in a moment, was useful not just as a way for us to learn about people's experiences of long COVID, but many of the people who took part in our research also found that that was a really interesting and useful experience for them. So this toolkit, as it says on the screen, began life as a research project. And we were interested in learning, particularly at the time, about women's experiences of long COVID. And what was interesting for us about this project and the method we used was how it gave people a way of talking about things that are often hard to put into words. So body mapping, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, is a creative method, but it also creates a space over a workshop to reflect on something you've gone through, particularly your experience of illness or long COVID in this case, and a way of communicating things that maybe you haven't been able to communicate before. And so in the process of doing our research, we realized that body mapping might be useful for more than just researchers. Many of our participants, although they often found the process challenging, and we'll reflect a little bit more on this, and it can be quite demanding sort of physically and emotionally, nonetheless, many of them just found it a really useful process that they could use to also think through what they'd experienced and maybe a way of sharing some of that experience with family and friends. So we thought, how can we make this tool available to people who maybe didn't get a chance to take part in the research, but would be interested in using the tool to reflect on their experiences? Okay, so got a presentation in about 3 parts. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Maaret, who's going to talk through how we went through the process of turning a research project into a toolkit. Oonagh's going to offer some reflections on the feedback we've had from our participants. And for those of you who are here who took part in the development of this toolkit, we're hugely grateful to members of the long COVID community who helped us develop this toolkit and gave us their very honest feedback, time, thought and care. It really helped us hone this into the toolkit it is today. And then I'll join at the end just to talk through how the toolkit works a little bit and where you can get access to it. So Maaret, I'll hand over to you now for the next bit of the talk.
All right, thanks, Beth. So there are different kind of definitions of long COVID, and I'm sure most of you know this, but it's often defined as a chronic illness involving adverse long-term health effects caused by the COVID-19 infection. And the fact why this is so important, is such an important, not only research topic, but also for this toolkit, is that over 2 million people are currently experiencing long COVID in the UK, over 400 million people worldwide. And the range and severity of symptoms people experience vary widely. And as many of you know, diagnosis and treatment options are still quite limited. So one of our participants, for example, described the impact of long COVID and what it had on their everyday life. They said, as I say, I'm a year and 4 months in, still very fatigued. It's much better than it was. Got up to managing kind of half-hour, 40-minute walks, doing some cooking, washing up, seeing people, managing conversations. So it's much better than it was. But fundamentally, I'm still living a very, very restricted life because I can't do much at all. And one of the key challenges for many people is finding adequate support. And many have been frustrated with healthcare providers who have been dismissive about their symptoms. And there are numerous medical and epidemiological studies that have shed light on the causes and symptoms of long COVID and the different ways that it has impacted people's everyday lives. And also a few emerging research projects demonstrating what qualitative social science might be able to do to support people with long COVID. And in our research project and this toolkit, we have used the method of body mapping. Body mapping is a research method which is used in social sciences and medical research, but also in art therapy to understand individual and collective experiences of different social phenomena, including experiences of health. And what we have found also is that body mapping workshops allow participants to express their experiences by drawing, writing, and collaging their responses to a set of guided questions, often, not always, as you will see, onto a life-sized outline map of their body. So it really facilitates the sharing of their stories with others. And body mapping is particularly well adapted for working with people who may struggle to put their experiences into words. As one of our participants explained in their words, patients rely on words with the closest related meaning, which often end up diminishing the severity of the actual symptom, for example, fatigue. Fatigue infers a meaning similar to tiredness, but the actual experience is often drastically worse and feels more like a deep sickness. And here you can see a body map from one of our first workshops showing what this kind of holistic view on the person's experience of long COVID may look like. So the aim of our project for developing this toolkit was to explore how body mapping could be used to better capture the range and depth of long COVID experiences, but also the diverse needs of people living with long COVID, how body mapping could be used as a tool for peer support amongst people with long COVID, and finally, as a means by which people with long COVID could better communicate the experiences to others. And now to the how we developed this toolkit. So I will first explain how we developed the toolkit, show also some of the body maps that participants created in our workshops, and then Oonagh will talk about the feedback, and Beth will present the final version. So to develop the toolkit, we organized 3 workshops, and we met online a couple of weeks later with the participants for a follow-up conversation. Unlike in our research project, these body mapping workshops were only organized online. And our aim was to offer the possibility to attend also to people who were severely ill and would not have been able to be there in person. In fact, we also had participants, for example, doing this workshop from their bed or from the couch. We sent the questions in beforehand, offered to send materials in case people didn't have them at home. And in our workshops, our key aim was really to create a safe space for people to discuss their experiences. And before we started the body mapping itself, we offered 2 different exercises, mindfulness and creative or language exercise. The mindfulness exercise used body scanning, and which offers a relaxing opportunity to connect with body, become aware of your body's sensations, and it was optional for participants, so they were free to opt out if they didn't feel comfortable doing it. And to assist participants in overcoming any hesitations or anxiety about drawing, because some may experience that, and we understand that, and to encourage them to explore how to visually represent their feelings and experiences. We also experimented with either a brief drawing exercise or a language-based activity in these workshops. And the creative exercise involved 45 seconds to draw something that represents how you feel today. The goal was to freely create expressive marks on paper, lines, scribbles, shapes, without the pressure of creating literal presentations. And the language exercise involved, again, 45 seconds to write as many words as you can think of that may describe how you feel. And now to the questions. The introductions we had were purposely open to interpretation so that people could talk about the experience in their own terms, in their own words, in their own time. And we asked participants to fill their body maps in a way that they really felt represented their own experience with long COVID. So there was no right or wrong way to do this. It was really about expressing their own unique experiences. And we suggested that they draw, paint, collage, write, however they saw fit. And we provided the following set of questions. What is important here is that the participants could use as many or as few of the questions that they wanted. And we also provided these in the preparation emails so that those who wanted to could prepare, but it was not obligatory. So the first one was life before long COVID. How did you experience your health before the symptoms started? Write a sentence, draw an image about how you experienced your health before. The second, symptoms. What kind of symptoms do you experience? Where in your body do you experience these symptoms? Third, living with long COVID. Do you feel that long COVID has affected your ability to live your life, your everyday life? And where in your body would you draw the impact of long COVID? Emotional impact, fourth. What kind of emotions do you associate with the experience? Where would you place them in your body? And where in your body do you feel weakness or strength? Fifth, support with long COVID. Do you feel that you have received support throughout your journey? What kind of support did you receive? What kind of feelings did this leave in your mind and body? And sixth, and finally, improving your quality of life. What kind of support would you need to improve your quality of life? And here are some of the body maps the participants drew in our workshops. And as you can see, they are all very different. Some use more text, others use more pictures. Some drew their life-size body on the floor, others used smaller pieces of paper. And I'm just giving you a bit of time to look at them. And many participants talk about themselves, their identity, ability to do things, and feelings before and after long COVID. And here, for example, you can see how one participant highlighted these differences by drawing two pictures of themselves.
I'm looking on my phone and it's really hard to see. Will these slides be available afterwards?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
And now I will hand over to Oonagh.
Thank you very much, Maaret, and thank you, Beth. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to discuss the 4 of our findings from the workshop and some of the feedback that we got. Overall, we had broadly really positive feedback. Participants gave an average rating of 4.45 out of 5 in the follow-up survey. I'm going to talk about kind of 4 key findings. And yeah, our first one was that online body mapping workshops help to address a gap in support for patients with more severe long COVID. As we know, long COVID is a heterogeneous condition with a big range of severity, and patients at the more severe end of the spectrum can be housebound or bedbound. These patients frequently experience profound isolation due to their debilitating symptoms and often become disconnected from their social networks. They also risk being overlooked in research, and this challenge has been emphasised in our other ongoing long COVID research project, in which we are carrying out a patient-centred agenda setting exercise. So online workshops offer more flexibility to participate from anywhere, enabling patients to join without the need for travel and from the comfort of their own homes. Like Maaret said, many participants attended while lying in bed or on their sofas, and the online format also made it easier for participants to just leave when they needed to, as you can just switch off Zoom rather than physically having to leave a room or a location, which can be a bit harder. As you can see in the body map on the screen at the moment, this participant drew a really low battery in a wheelchair. And on the bottom right, they've also drawn themselves doing what they called supine gardening, describing an activity where they could get out the house for a few minutes to lie down in the garden. This participant would have been unable to attend an in-person workshop, and so it was really good to provide the opportunity for them to take part online. Obviously, we could do even more to make it more accessible. For some people, even an online workshop is too much, and so we could explore ways. We've talked about exploring ways to leverage technology so that the workshop requires less energy. Or one idea is to incorporate tools like Canva or the Dada app with pre-made images. We could even take it a step further. All this obviously requires more resources than we currently have, but one could imagine developing a custom tailored app, and that app could then also be adapted for use in other illnesses. So there's lots of options, and there are ways to make this more accessible. Yeah, thank you. Our second finding was that body mapping is a powerful tool, and that it needs to be handled with care. For many, long COVID has been a really difficult and often very traumatic journey, marked by stigma, isolation, and a deep lack of understanding. We found that these workshops were sometimes the first opportunity for participants to openly discuss what they were going through with other people who could relate and understand. So this process frequently brought up quite a big range of intense emotions, and despite the emotional intensity of the workshops, many participants found the experience to still be positive overall, as it provided an opportunity to emotionally process their experience. So it was sometimes a case of it was difficult during the workshop, but in the longer run, people were really pleased that they had done it. Feedback from participants highlighted the importance of feeling supported not only during the workshop, but also in the days that followed. Many emphasised the importance of having follow-up sessions available shortly afterwards, which offered a continued space for support and discussion with peers as people processed what they were going through as a result of having done body mapping. It's important to recognise there's a balance to be maintained between offering support and respecting participants' autonomy. Not everybody wants to come to support sessions after a workshop. Not everybody wants continued support. They're quite happy just doing the workshop and that being enough for them. It's important to recognise that everyone's experience of long COVID is unique, and so are their needs and comfort levels. So providing care should involve offering flexible options that accommodate different levels of participation. In this way, it's possible to create a supportive environment where participants can feel genuinely heard and respected. So some quotes to kind of illustrate that. And these quotes highlight both the challenges involved in engaging with the process, but also that it can be beneficial. So I think it benefited personally for me because, as I said, it was my first experience with other people, and honestly, it knocked me for another week. It seriously knocked me out. I was so overwhelmed by people's experiences, reliving what had happened. It really did take a toll. But when I got over all of that and I was able to think clearer again about it, I actually really think it was really important for me to be able to move forward. Obviously, I must have been stuck for it to have affected me so much, but I think it was really useful. So for me, it was extremely difficult, but I think it was really worth it. So I'm glad that I did it. Do you know what it's done? It's made me realize how far I've come and how much better I am, you know, listening to P15 and reading all these things and how I'm healing and on the mend. So it's good revisiting all of this and actually realizing, you know, flip this over and now write down all the things I can do. That's great. And for you to say that actually sort of always people say, oh, most people do get that. Some people make huge improvements, but I mean, no, it's not in your head and it's always hard. You still have a journey to go, but you'll get there. Our third finding is related to pacing, which is a key part of managing long COVID, as many of us already know. Pacing involves managing daily activities by taking regular breaks and allowing rest, with the frequency and duration tailored to the severity of the symptoms. Patients often use the word spoons to describe how many units of energy they have in any given day before their symptoms will start to worsen. Obviously, we needed to consider the structure of the workshop in order to accommodate the needs of participants and their pacing requirements. Maaret has discussed how we approach the scheduling, and we received broadly positive feedback about this. We found it was beneficial to participants to clearly communicate the structure and length of the workshop in advance. This meant participants could consider whether they had the health capacity to complete the workshop. We also made it very clear from the start that participants were welcome to take breaks or leave the workshop at any time if they needed to. There was also a suggestion in our feedback of spacing the workshop out over a few days. The workshop could be divided into 2 or 3 separate sessions over 2 to 3 weeks. So first you would do a session which provides an introduction and an instruction on how to do the body map. Then people would go away to do their body map in their own time. And then you could do a session for presenting the body maps, and then finally a follow-up session. We think that this structure would offer several benefits. Firstly, each session could be shorter, making it more accessible for those with more severe symptoms. 2, it would provide participants the opportunity to reflect on their experiences and engage with the body maps at their own pace. As we've mentioned, the workshops ask people to engage with a difficult, possibly traumatic experience that spans over multiple years. It's a big ask and there's a lot to think about. And so fitting that into one workshop can be not necessarily ideal. It would also allow for more time to engage and discuss the body maps together. We found that the discussion amongst peers was something many participants found valuable, and so maximising the time available for that could be really positive. It would also enable inclusion of a cool down mindfulness exercise at the end of each session, helping participants transition out of the workshop environment. Slide, please. Thank you. Our 4th finding was that body mapping can provide a space for participants to visualise their experience on their own terms. So many people with long COVID have encountered poor understanding of their illness, and in many cases their condition has been dismissed or reduced to psychological factors. The frequency of these experiences has been traumatic for many people, and it's also not uncommon to experience this from those in positions of power, such as healthcare professionals or employers, which can lead to particularly negative consequences for people. Conventional research methods can unintentionally recreate a similar power dynamic, not because the research is dismissive, but because they hold power in the interaction, shaping the conversation on their terms and potentially lacking a full understanding of what it is like to experience long COVID. This can mirror past traumatic experiences, making participation difficult. Providing a space for participants to visualize their experience, for example, via body mapping, visualize their experience on their own terms, for example, via body mapping, can provide a context for patients where that power dynamic is not as strong and it's more accessible and a better way to engage with research. Yeah, so these are the 4 findings we wanted to highlight today. I'm going to pass it back to Beth now, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Okay, so obviously we've learned a lot through this process, and we're continuing to reflect on this and work with long COVID support to think about the possibility of doing more workshops in the future. But that takes time and that takes resource. So in the interim, we thought it would be really interesting maybe to share the method more widely. So we've created this toolkit for individuals. So if anybody here wanted to try making their own maps, maybe as a way of reflecting on their experiences, or maybe as a way of having a conversation with friends and family and sharing those experiences in a different way, this toolkit, we hope, could do that. If you just skip on to the next slide. I think that always comes with a few things to think about. Obviously, this isn't for everybody. No solution works for everybody. It might be something you try and you're like, that doesn't work for me. It might be something you try and you find really rewarding. And we have to be open to that. What is, I think, key is making sure it's the right time for you. It's quite a physically and emotionally demanding process. That's something we learned from the focus groups. And when you're thinking about pacing, you need to be at the right time. So you might think about, I'd like to do this, but maybe not today. I'd like to do this when I've got a bit more energy, or now might be a good time, but it really needs to be the right time for you. I also need to stress this isn't a form of therapy. We're social scientists. We're not clinicians. We're not therapists, and I can't offer you any guaranteed therapeutic outcomes. It's a tool for communication. It's a tool for having conversations and talking about things, but it isn't a therapy. That said, the reason we wanted to share it is because people found it useful for that communication purpose, and we'd like to make that more accessible. So if you wanted to go ahead with this, there are some things to do in advance, and all this is detailed in the downloadable PDF. First of all, you need some materials, and we have lots of suggestions for you. You need a piece of paper to draw on, you need some crafting materials, pens, papers, glue, scissors, whatever you have to hand. You need to create an outline of your body. Some people, as you saw in the pictures, do that by lying down on a massive piece of paper and maybe getting a friend or family member to draw around them. But people have done it in notebooks, in sketchbooks. You normally need a little bit of room, so A4 is good, but you can use any piece of paper you like. There is no right or wrong way to do this. And then the third important preparatory step, and something I learned from our long COVID participants, is making space to rest and recover afterwards. So as we said, this can be a demanding process. So you might want to make sure you've got a snack prepared for the end, a space to rest in, and someone you can talk to. Obviously, you know, organisations like Long COVID Support are here, but a lot of people said they'd like to have, you know, a friend they could phone at the end. Yep, I'm coming to a downloadable link. A friend or partner nearby so they can talk through things afterwards. So that's an important part of the preparation as well. Then it's good to try and create some space to get in the right frame of mind. So we've got some suggestions again. You might want to use an online meditation tool or reflection if you find those helpful, or a mindfulness exercise. You might want to do some short creative activities. So one of the ones we explored in the workshop is getting people to just close their eyes, think a little bit about how their body feels today, and just make any kind of marks on the paper that reflect this. Maybe you feel like a wiggly line, maybe you feel like a squiggly line, all these kinds of things. We also tried asking people, what kind of weather are you today? And it's just that process of allowing yourself time and space to reflect on how you're feeling and think about how you might want to express that. So it's all about kind of easing yourself in. And then if we move on to the next slide, then that's the time to think about creating your map. And as Maaret described, we had a list of questions or prompts we gave people as starting points, but equally you might want to follow your own path. That's part of the process, doing what feels right for you, letting things sort of flow and express themselves. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's got to work for you. You can spend as long as you want. You can do it in one session. You could do it along several sessions. Some people have said, having done it once, they actually wanted to wait a few months and then maybe come back and make another map as a way of kind of tracking how things changed over time. And as I said before, it's really important to allow time to reflect, recover, and also move out of that space. If you sort of come into a space and you're sort of been doing lots of reflecting, give yourself time to sort of ease out of it as well. That's really important. Maybe do another reflection, take 5 minutes just to process. Give yourself time and space to work through things. Okay. If we just move on to the next slide, someone was asking where you can access the toolkit. So I've put a QR code on screen. We'll be sharing the slides afterwards if you need the link messages, but the QR code should take you directly to our website where you can download the toolkit as a PDF. And if you have time and if you try this and if you find it helpful, or equally if you've got other kinds of feedback, maybe things we could change or do better, there's a link on the website, and we'd really love to hear from you if this has been helpful, sharing our methods in this way for you. Okay, I'm going to stop talking there, I think. Good academics always cite their references, so there we go. A huge acknowledgements to my colleagues, to everybody at Long COVID Support. It's been amazing working with you. Long may it continue. And again, to all the participants who helped us develop that toolkit. A lot of the things we made and changed and making sure we had enough time was their feedback, and that was so hugely valuable. Right. Jo, I'm going to hand over to you now and see if we have any questions in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much to Beth, Maaret and Oonagh for taking us through that. It's been really, really interesting. Great conversation going on in the chat. we've got some of the participants who would really love an app, and some that would prefer the paper route. So I think it kind of like goes both ways as far as how people would like it to be presented and provided to them. Really, really good question from Andrea. With many patients being moved to mental health services, social prescribers for non-LC specific support, could professionals in those roles be trained to conduct body mapping sessions? Who wants to
That's a
take
really
that?
good, it's a really good question. Maaret, Oonagh, did you have any particular thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, Maaret knows this the best, I think, but I can say, like, I think it would be brilliant if we could make that happen. I think from the experience of the workshops, I think that could be something that was really beneficial. Yeah, Maaret, what do you think?
It would be amazing to have health practitioners as well involved in this. So yes, definitely.
Fantastic. And I know that JG's put a couple of comments in about wanting to use this as for a long COVID review coming up with whoever is your clinician. I think that did happen with memory serves me right. I think a few people did that when we were doing the body mapping sessions, of people actually drew it and then they took it along to their doctors, and it helped them as well. So I think that's really, really important. One person did actually ask the question, and Michelle asked the question of, I work running NHS peer support groups. Does this work for MECFS as well? As we have both in our service, can we use this with groups?
Yes, I think certainly. Yeah, I think it would work really well with MECFS for sure. Yeah, very similar needs, so for sure. And it's adapted for pacing and that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, that would be brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. Gemma has asked the question, what was the language activity?
Oh, that one that we did, it was like a words brainstorm, wasn't it? It was, as Maaret was talking about, we wanted to do some kind of introductory exercises just to kind of get people settled in and to the workshop and kind of get their like thinking about things and how they were feeling. And I think what we basically did was you had 45 seconds to write down any words that came to your mind about how you were feeling today. Yeah. And it was just a way of one of the things that we've talked about is how language really fails long COVID, and to express the experiences of to express the experience of long COVID, like the words that we have aren't great. Like I always talk about the word fatigue and how I think it does us such a disservice, because what I'm experiencing was nothing like the fatigue that people think I'm experiencing when I say fatigue. And so just trying to kind of broaden that and think, okay, what other words could we use that better describe what this is like, basically. So it was like, that was the kind of the reasoning behind that exercise, was to start thinking about different words, basically.
Thank you. Now, Leanne has got a great question, actually. Could you separate each question in individual sessions, building each time on same body map? Could you use AI to generate the image like people do their superheroes?
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's the amazing thing about body mapping, is that you can use it in very different ways. You can develop in different directions. As Beth said also at the end, is that you can use this toolkit and develop your own. You can add questions or just use one question as you suggested. Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great idea. And Katie's done a few comments, but talking about any suggestions for running this as a peer long COVID sufferer, I would love to share with my community. Have really loved how well you have thought about it. It is full of love and experience. And then she goes on to say, through the COVID support community, which we know well, we have been hosting Friday light creativity sessions, quiet time and short sharing. So have experience, but always up for any tips, ideas and support.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is we'd love to see this tool rolled out where it can help people, and that would be fantastic. But that post-workshop support is really, really important.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're trying to get more capacity for is to make sure that there's someone on hand, or there's space on hand, whether that's a peer support network, whether that's a more professional form of support, because it can stir a lot of things up, and people need someone there maybe afterwards to help them then work through that. And there are different ways you can provide that, but if you were doing this with a group, that's something I'd really bear in mind and think of. Have we got a space to check in with people afterwards? Is there someone they can talk to afterwards? Have they got a friend or family member around? I think that's really key.
Thank you. A couple more questions. One from Avril. Has this been rolled out to long COVID clinics? Would be great for them to run online workshops. I'll share it with our local provider.
That would be great. Yes, we have talked about with long COVID support. Actually, the idea would be at some point to start workshops. So, but of course, any other organizations who would be interested, we'd love that.
Yeah. Thank you. Nigel asks, how can body mapping be used as an advocacy tool to help make the lived experience of long COVID more visible and better understood by healthcare professionals, policymakers, or the wider public?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's something we have talked about in the past, because these body maps are so powerful. I think it's about getting them out in the public, and we have talked about doing an exhibition, or a virtual exhibition, something that like publishes them basically and exhibits these body maps, because I think they do a great job of kind of crossing that gap between people who've experienced long COVID and people who don't understand it, and trying to communicate what it's actually like in a way that, as I keep saying, words can sometimes fail. So yeah, I think it's kind of about having the capacity and like having the resources to do it. But I think an exhibition would be brilliant.
Yes, I mean, I'm just carrying on reading down that Emily's just said, actually, could this be combined into a display with a long COVID awareness day banner? Because obviously that was words and feelings, so that was really expressions. We'll do a tour. Don't know when, but we will do one. What else is there? I know that Katie and Joe are talking about doing a co-host on something. I think there was Tamsin, who's an OT with long COVID. Can see this working across so many long-term conditions: fibromyalgia, arthritis, COPD. I don't know, Beth and Maaret, what other areas has it been used in? Has it been used in other conditions?
Speak about the history of body mapping, maybe.
Research areas.
Yeah.
So it started in different places. One of them was in South Africa in the 1990s, beginning of 2000, with HIV and AIDS. So because it was such this kind of illness that people didn't really understand. There are various other things, a lot with mental health, on issues such as reproductive health, migration, really a lot of different kinds of experiences. And both in research as well as these kind of toolkits to really support people with these different experiences.
Thank you. Leanne's asked a very good question. How soon after a session would it be appropriate to have support? Have you been available whenever someone needs or touch base at any agreed frequency?
I think we were kind of trying to figure out what was the best way to do it, and I'd be interested to see what Beth, Joe, and Maaret think about this. But I think what's important is that you have an arranged session that people know is going to be there, and it's within a few days afterwards, I would say. And so not everyone will want to use it, but it's about people knowing that there is a place to come. I don't think necessarily you need to like constantly be available, although yeah, that's kind of a capacity thing a little bit. Like that's quite difficult if you have other things going on, which most people do. But I think what's important is that people know there is somewhere to go to quite soon afterwards, and that is arranged beforehand so that people are not waiting to hear from you.
And I think what is also really important here is to say that this toolkit was done really in collaboration with long COVID support. And it was because we thought that we have already an organization who is able to support in case there are any questions or people need support after the sessions.
Just to say, I think you expressed that really well. If you're thinking about a group session, having a dedicated time to check in with everybody a few days after is really, really helpful. But also, if you're doing this on your own, equally, I know often you can be home on your own, you're quite isolated. So making sure you've got maybe a phone call scheduled with a friend or family member. So on the individual scale, make sure there's someone to talk to. On a group scale, set up a check-in session maybe 2 or 3 days after, so people know they can come back. And people found actually that sharing process of going through that really helpful as well.
A couple more questions. I'm going to go in a different order to how they came in, but Leanne asked a question very specifically on how long did you spend on each question, or was it completely personal?
Completely personal. However you want. Yeah. And you don't have to answer every question. It's kind of whatever feels right for you. They're there to kind of provide a prompt and get you thinking about your experience. But I just think everybody's experience is so deeply personal and different as well. And so I wouldn't let the questions limit you if you think, oh, that's not quite right. Like, there's absolutely no obligation to answer it. Yeah. And if you think of other questions, like, go for it.
I mean, when we did the workshops, we normally allowed about 2 hours. So a lot of the images you're seeing on screen would have been created in maybe between an hour and 2 hours. But most people then wanted to come back to them and wanted more time and wanted to go away and do more. So, I mean, as a starting point, you could go, okay, I'll give myself an hour, and that could be broken up over several smaller blocks. But equally, you might be able to do something meaningful in 30 minutes or 3 days or 3 months, or it's completely personal in that sense.
Thank you. Mark has asked a question, more generic question, but equally important. All long COVID services in my area are no longer available. What is the future of any long COVID support returning again? Would be great if body mapping could be a part of that. I think from from Oonagh and I's perspective, working at long COVID support, I think we are very aware of that, and we can start to, talk to various people about what's happening in the future and how this can be shared more widely, Oonagh.
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation with regards to the NHS and the long COVID clinics. The charity is working as hard as it can to try and keep them open. Yeah, I think in the meantime, in terms of the toolkits, I think it would be the kind of thing that hopefully, like, we'd love. The charity's looking into this as well, is setting up these sessions as like run by the charity. Basically, I think that's going to be our best chance of making these available to people. Yeah, it's a little bit of it's a resources thing, and we are trying to get the resources, basically the time. But yeah, that's something we would love to do.
Fantastic. Abby's made a comment which is really quite useful. I wonder if starting with a base on paper and then revisiting on trace paper so that they could be layered to help us identify symptoms, thoughts that repeat, perhaps. I like that idea.
That
sounds brilliant. Yeah.
It's kind of like coding, but with the images.
Yeah.
So when we do these sessions in research, when we transcribe it, then we look at different kind of the similarities. So this would be a similar way, but with images. Yeah, great idea.
Yep. Avril said there was a talk not so long ago detailing the funding given to each area in the country for long COVID. Yes, we've got it on our website. We've got the Oonagh, could you just put it onto the chat while I just talk it? So the long COVID clinics, we did a report on the long COVID clinics, and then we put FOI requests out to all regions, and there's a tool on our website that gives all of that information. Oh, thanks, Emily. Yes, and Jane, yeah, you make a good point. Minimizing long COVID. I think that's it for questions. Unless anybody else has got any questions to ask, you can drop them in the chat if you have. Otherwise, I think we'll give everybody a minute just in case. I think that's covered it. I think that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to Beth who can close. She started us off.
Yeah, I just wanted to spot, there was a comment from Jane there that I'm afraid I don't have an answer to about getting things on GP records, but I just wanted to acknowledge that and say it's been heard, and I think other people are picking up on that in the chat. Yeah, thank you. Lots of thanks in the chat. Thank you all so much for your time, which I know is precious, and for giving us a chance to share this work with you. Thanks again to the amazing team and everybody at Long COVID Support for the fantastic work they're doing. Emily for being our technical whiz, much appreciated, and keeping on top of the chat, and to everybody here, and to all our participants who were willing to help us develop this. It's so much appreciated. We could leave the chat open for a little bit longer in case there are more questions and follow up that way, couldn't we?
Yeah, I've just seen a question about the recording being sent. We will send it round. Emily, there's people, we have an email list of people who've signed up to the event, right? So we can send a recording to everyone that signed up to the event. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So Eventbrite registers everyone's emails when you sign up, so we should just be able to fire it out to everyone.
Yeah, and perfect. And we will upload it onto the Long COVID Support YouTube channel as well. Perfect.
Got one question from Abby, which is, do you have plans to do more workshops?
Not in terms of the research project. So Beth and Maaret and I, we and Joe, we're not doing running any workshops in that regard, but the charity does want to hold them. It's a bit of finding the capacity and finding the resources to make it happen, but it's definitely something we would love to do if possible. Cool. I think that's probably, yeah, I'm conscious of time. It'd be nice to finish early. So yeah, just reiterate what Beth said. Thank you so much everyone for coming along. Really hope you find it useful, and please do let us know any feedback. The slides have our email addresses on, and yeah, there's a feedback form on the website as well. So it'd be lovely to hear from you. Yeah, thank you so much.